When Captain Bradley Foster ordered Victoria Thompson to strip her uniform in front of 300 soldiers, he thought he was exposing a weak link who didn't belong. But as the fabric fell away, revealing the Iron Wolf tattoo etched between her shoulder blades, the general's face turned pale. Foster realized he had just made the gravest mistake of his career. Before we continue, tell me where you're watching from, and if this story grabs you, make sure you're subscribed because tomorrow there's something truly special waiting for you. Victoria Thompson had mastered invisibility. At 30, her unremarkable appearance let her blend effortlessly into any crowd. Average height, shoulder-length auburn hair neatly tied back, and a face that hid the storms of her past. Her combat boots were standard issue, scuffed from use but never neglected. Her BDUs hung loosely over her lean frame, making her look more like she was playing dress-up than a battle-hardened soldier. For 5 weeks, she remained the mystery of Fort Meridian Military Base in Arizona. While other soldiers marched in perfect formation, Victoria moved with efficiency, her every motion deliberate, her silence speaking volumes. As cadences echoed across the desert, she observed everything, cataloging details others overlooked. Fort Meridian sprawled across the Arizona desert like a small city. Its tan buildings and training facilities shimmered under the relentless sun. Established in 1943, it had grown into a premier military training center where elite units sharpened skills beyond conventional programs. From cyber warfare specialists to special operations candidates, exceptional was standard. Yet Victoria fit none of these categories. She had arrived on a Tuesday with paperwork that raised more questions than it answered. Transfer orders stamped with Pentagon signatures unknown to most base personnel, clearance codes that unnerved administrative staff. When asked about her past, she only said her previous assignment was classified, providing a contact number that led to a recorded message requesting verification. From day one, the other soldiers whispered about her. During morning PT, when others struggled through obstacle courses designed to push limits, Victoria completed every exercise with fluid precision, leaving everyone else in awe. Her precision looked effortless. Victoria never appeared winded, never showed strain, never celebrated finishing. She simply completed the task, recorded notes in a small leather journal tucked into her cargo pocket, and moved on. Her bunk in the women's barracks was minimalist and regimented. Bedding pulled tight enough to bounce a coin, personal items arranged with military exactness, and a small wooden box secured with a combination no one had ever seen her open. She didn't socialize during downtime. Instead, she sat alone in the common area, writing in her journal with tiny, precise handwriting that looked almost like coded language from a distance. Weapons training deepened the mystery. While others got familiar with standard-issue gear, Victoria handled every weapon with instinctive mastery. Her shooting scores weren't just exceptional, they were mathematically perfect, not an attempt to impress, but a demonstration of effortless competence. What unsettled her peers wasn't her skill. The military respected that. It was her detachment. She participated, obeyed every order, completed every task flawlessly, but emotionally, she was untouchable. She observed her comrades struggle, fail, and succeed, but her expression never wavered. She was present but uninvested. Basic training was designed to expose weakness through controlled stress, physically, mentally, and emotionally. Instructors monitored reactions, having seen almost every human behavior under pressure. Victoria never broke. Every challenge was met with calm efficiency, as if she'd done it all before. Her silence became legendary. While others bonded over hardship or celebrated small victories, she ate alone, spoke only when addressed, and answered minimally, "Yes, sir," "No, sir," "Understood." She volunteered no details, asked no questions, and ignored the typical social bonds formed under shared stress. Her eyes unsettled people most. They held depths that hinted at experiences far beyond anything her fellow soldiers had faced. During combat briefings, she listened like someone reviewing familiar material. When psychological pressures of warfare were described, she nodded with understanding, as if she'd lived them. The base's rumor mill churned endlessly. Some guessed she was a high-ranking officer's daughter, others thought she was a psychological test subject. A few believed she was an undercover investigator assessing the training program. None were correct. What no one knew, Victoria had been part of a mission so secret its existence was classified above the highest military levels. Operation Midnight Falcon was a surgical strike to eliminate a terrorist cell that had secured weapons-grade plutonium to build a dirty bomb. Operatives needed to function independently, adapt quickly, and survive hostile territory without support. 12 soldiers were chosen for Midnight Falcon. Each possessed skills beyond conventional military training, psychological resilience, technical mastery, linguistic abilities, and tactical innovation. They trained for 8 months, forming a seamless unit. The mission lasted 6 days. In the end, the terrorist cell was destroyed, the plutonium secured, and only one operative reached the extraction point alive, Victoria. She carried the weight of 11 deaths and the knowledge that their sacrifice prevented a catastrophe that could have killed hundreds of thousands. She was debriefed, decorated in secret ceremonies, and given medical leave to recover physically and mentally. When ready, the military faced a problem. Victoria's skills were too valuable for normal assignments, but her psychological state required time. The solution: Fort Meridian, where she could stay ready while the Pentagon determined her next deployment. So Victoria watched and waited, completing training exercises that felt like child's play compared to her past missions. Around her, soldiers had no idea they shared a base with someone who had survived experiences they couldn't imagine. Every evening, she wrote in her journal, not about herself, but her peers. She noted who cracked under pressure, who adapted, who led, who obeyed blindly. She assessed the program's effectiveness against standards needed for missions like Midnight Falcon. The irony wasn't lost. The soldiers who whispered about her weakness were being silently evaluated by someone whose experience they couldn't fathom. Yet Victoria took no pleasure in their ignorance. Victoria understood that perception mattered in military culture. She deliberately presented herself as unremarkable, hiding capabilities that would have raised uncomfortable questions. Each night, in her perfectly organized bunk, she listened to the conversations around her. Speculation about her past, criticism of her performance, jokes about her silence. She filed the information silently, noting which soldiers felt threatened by what they couldn't understand. Tomorrow would bring another day of exercises, another chance to observe and evaluate. And in the back of her mind, she wondered how long she could maintain this careful balance between competence and concealment before someone forced her to reveal her true abilities. The mess hall buzzed with the energy of soldiers unwinding after morning drills. Steam rose from industrial-sized coffee urns, and hundreds of conversations merged into a low hum, bouncing off concrete walls decorated with faded motivational posters and unit insignias. Victoria sat alone in a corner, methodically eating scrambled eggs that tasted like cardboard while making notes in her leather journal. From her vantage point, she could observe the entire facility. Years of mission experience had trained her situational awareness, seeing hierarchies, alliances, and rivalries form under stress, and tracking how information flowed through informal networks more powerful than official communications. 3 tables away, Sergeant Melissa Kane held court with a group of female soldiers drawn to her charisma. Blonde, confident, and commanding attention effortlessly, Kane's uniform was flawless, her hair regulation yet stylish, her makeup precise despite rules discouraging it. Her voice carried across the noise of the mess hall, developed from years of addressing soldiers in challenging environments. "I'm telling you," Kane said, gesturing with her coffee cup, "there's something seriously off about Thompson. 5 weeks here, and nobody knows anything about her background. That's not normal protocol." The women nodded, pulled into Kane's certainty like iron filings to a magnet. Corporal Sarah Walsh leaned forward conspiratorially. "My friend in admin tried to pull her file yesterday. Half of it's redacted, the rest requires clearance she doesn't have." "Exactly," Kane replied, satisfaction clear. "Nobody shows up with that kind of classified background unless they're hiding something. And look at her, does she even look like she belongs in advanced training?" Across the room, Kane's eyes found Victoria with a predatory precision. "She sits alone, never talks, acts like she's above the rest of us. Watch her during exercises, going through motions like she's bored. That's not dedication. That's arrogance." Private Jordan Walsh, Sarah's younger brother, who had arrived 2 weeks earlier, shook his head. "It's insulting. We've earned our spots through years of service, deployments, proving ourselves in the field, and she just shows up with mysterious paperwork and is treated like she belongs. Their conversation drew attention from neighboring tables, curiosity rippling through the hall like waves from a dropped stone. Soldiers paused their own discussions, intrigued by someone who had remained enigmatic in an environment where privacy was nearly impossible. Captain Bradley Foster noticed the commotion from his position near the officer section. At 34, Foster carried the confident authority of someone who had risen quickly and intended to keep climbing. His uniform was immaculate, posture perfect, expression intense, someone who saw every interaction as a test of authority. Foster had been watching Victoria since her arrival, and her presence bothered him on multiple levels. Her calm competence made others look inadequate, reflecting poorly on his ability to maintain unit cohesion. Her mysterious background suggested connections beyond his authority. Most importantly, she created questions he could not answer, and Foster had built his career on having all the answers. He approached Kane's table with measured strides, used to having conversations halt in his presence. The female soldiers straightened immediately, casual chatter replaced by formal respect. "Sergeant Kane," Foster said, voice carrying beyond the group. "I couldn't help but overhear your concerns about Soldier Thompson. Perhaps you'd like to share your observations with someone who can address them." Kane's eyes lit up with the satisfaction of someone finally being taken seriously. "Sir, it's not just me. Multiple soldiers have expressed concerns about Thompson's presence here. Her attitude seems inconsistent with the collaborative environment we're trying to maintain." Foster nodded, playing the part of the attentive commanding officer. "What specific behaviors concern you?" "She doesn't participate in group activities, sir. Doesn't engage in team-building exercises designed for cohesion. During downtime, she isolates herself instead of bonding. And during training, she performs exercises with what appears to be minimal effort while still outperforming everyone else." Corporal Nathan Phillips, stocky with tattooed arms, added, "Sir, Thompson's performance suggests she's not challenged by our training regimen. Either she's not being pushed hard enough, or she doesn't take it seriously." "And her background," added Private Tyler Kim, young and eager. "None of us know what qualifies her for this program. That lack of transparency creates distrust." Foster absorbed their complaints with measured consideration, evaluating multiple perspectives while keeping his face neutral. In reality, Foster was calculating the political advantage of addressing a problem already sparking discussion among the soldiers. Taking action against Thompson would demonstrate his commitment to standards, regardless of any connections she might have. It would also remove a source of uncertainty that had bothered him since her arrival. "Your concerns are noted," Foster said with the gravity of someone making an important decision. "Unit cohesion is essential for mission success. Any factor that undermines it must be addressed promptly and decisively." He paused, letting the weight of his words sink into the growing audience. "I'll conduct a comprehensive evaluation of all personnel to ensure everyone meets the standards expected at this facility. This includes both skill and attitude." Soldiers around him nodded, satisfied that their complaints were being taken seriously. Foster had positioned himself as the decisive leader, addressing legitimate concerns without appearing to target a soldier who made him uncomfortable. Victoria continued eating her breakfast, seemingly oblivious to the conversation 3 tables away. But her training had taught her to process multiple conversations simultaneously while appearing disengaged. She heard every word, noted every speaker, and recognized how Foster was using genuine command concerns to cloak what looked like a personal agenda. She had encountered officers like Foster before, competent enough to rise through conventional hierarchies but lacking the intuitive leadership needed in unpredictable situations. Such officers often overcompensated by rigidly following regulations and seeing deviations as threats to their authority. The problem was that Victoria herself was a deviation. Her background defied standard explanations, her skills exceeded the baseline expectations for her rank, and her behavior didn't fit the social dynamics Foster was used to controlling. Finishing her meal, Victoria read the signs of escalating tension that often preceded conflict. Foster had positioned himself as protector of unit standards. Kane had become the voice of soldier concerns, and the growing group of supporters had created an audience expecting resolution. The careful balance Victoria had maintained for 5 weeks was shifting. She knew that passive observation might soon end. Someone would push hard enough to force a response, something beyond silent competence. Closing her journal and securing it in her cargo pocket, she walked toward the exit with the same economical, deliberate movements she had used since arrival. Behind her, speculation about the mysterious woman grew, soldiers drawn further into curiosity and confusion. The morning sun promised another brutal day in the Arizona desert, and Victoria sensed that today would test more than physical endurance. Today, questions would demand answers, and those answers could change everything. The weapons maintenance facility at Fort Meridian operated in organized chaos. Rows of disassembled rifles lay on metal tables like mechanical puzzles, components sorted with military precision into labeled containers. The air smelled of gun oil and cleaner, punctuated by the rhythmic sounds of soldiers focused on their tasks, aware that lives could depend on the reliability of the weapons. Victoria occupied a corner workstation, systematically cleaning and reassembling an M4 carbine. Her movements were so fluid they looked choreographed. Muscle memory guided her through procedures she had performed thousands of times in settings ranging from clean workshops to muddy foxholes in hostile territory. Every component was inspected, cleaned, and replaced with meticulous care. What set Victoria apart wasn't speed, though she worked faster than most, but the unconscious mastery that marked someone beyond mere proficiency. She didn't need to think about proper assembly or inspection. Her hands moved with the precision of someone who had done this under pressure countless times. Instinctively, flawlessly Victoria's hands moved with instinctive precision. She no longer had to think about trigger assembly or bolt carrier maintenance. Her fingers detected worn spots, minor imperfections, and potential failure points as naturally as breathing. Adjustments were made with the same careful efficiency that had once kept her alive under far more extreme conditions. Other soldiers often stole glances at her workstation, part professional curiosity, part uncomfortable recognition that her skill made their own abilities seem elementary. Victoria never acknowledged them, offered no advice, and never joined casual conversation. Her focus remained entirely on the task in front of her. Complex problems were solved silently, without explanation or fanfare. She worked independently, ignoring struggles around her, her detachment absolute. Private Tyler Kim, struggling at the station next to her, wrestled with a bolt assembly that refused to seat properly. His frustration grew, movements jerky, breath shallow. Victoria observed from the corner of her eye, noting the minor warping preventing alignment. She could fix it in seconds, but offering help would break the social distance she had carefully maintained for 5 weeks. Kim would eventually solve it himself. What? You aren't going to help? Kim snapped, voice loud enough for others to hear. Most soldiers would assist a comrade in trouble. Victoria's hands never paused. Her eyes remained on the weapon components. She continued reassembling with the same steady, fluid precision, as if the challenge around her was mere background noise. Corporal Nathan Phillips watched, satisfaction clear. Zero team spirit, zero interest in helping fellow soldiers, he muttered. Many soldiers struggling with the training felt the sting of comparison. Victoria's refusal to assist made them feel inadequate. Sergeant Melissa Kane arrived at the perfect moment. "This is exactly what I've been telling Captain Foster," she said, voice carrying authority. "Unit cohesion relies on mutual support. How can we function as a team when some refuse to engage?" Victoria finally looked up, eyes scanning from Kim to Phillips with a cold, methodical assessment, cataloguing threats rather than social dynamics. Silence stretched as soldiers waited for her to respond. Instead, she set down her tools, reached for her small notebook, and made notes in dense, precise handwriting. The act was dismissive. She treated their complaints as data, not confrontation. Kim's frustration boiled over. "Are you seriously taking notes? We're talking about teamwork, and you're treating it like research." Victoria continued writing, corrections and additions meticulous, before closing the notebook and returning to her rifle. Her hands moved with practiced mastery, indifferent to the criticisms around her. Kane's face flushed, anger fueled by being ignored rather than challenged. "This ends today," she said, voice firm. "I'm documenting this behavior and forwarding it. Captain Foster needs to know we have a soldier refusing to function as part of a team." Phillips nodded. Military service isn't a solo career. We succeed or fail together. The room quieted as soldiers paused, watching Victoria. She became the center of attention without speaking, a silence so powerful it drew scrutiny and criticism alike. But she remained focused, her mind processing social dynamics as if they were tactical exercises. She had faced hostile interrogations, isolation, and manipulation. A few frustrated soldiers were barely a challenge. What concerned her was the escalation into formal complaints. The balance she had maintained for 5 weeks was collapsing. Soon, she would have to choose between maintaining her cover and revealing enough to protect herself, actions that would raise questions about her background. Completing the rifle reassembly and post-maintenance inspection, Victoria allowed herself a moment to reflect. The soldiers questioning her dedication had never faced conditions where failure meant death, carried impossible decisions, or bore the consequences of tactical choices that saved or sacrificed lives. Soon, they would understand exactly who she was, and why her silence had been her greatest kindness. The morning briefing room buzzed with nervous energy. Soldiers filed in for a special evaluation session. Captain Foster stood at the front, uniform sharp, clipboard in hand, reviewing the schedule displayed on a large screen, obscured under a cover slide, performance assessment, all personnel. Victoria entered with her usual economy of motion, selecting a back row seat where she could observe without drawing attention. Her leather journal rested in her lap, ready to record observations. Something in the energy of the room felt charged, like invisible currents building toward a storm. Sergeant Melissa Kane sat in the third row, surrounded by supporters who whispered and exchanged glances toward Victoria. Their body language reflected anticipation, the culmination of a week-long campaign to address perceived problems with unit cohesion. Foster called the room to attention. 200 soldiers snapped to their feet, movement echoing off walls adorned with quotes about courage, honor, and sacrifice. As they settled, silence fell, focused, expectant. "Ladies and gentlemen," Foster began, voice measured and rehearsed. "This facility exists to prepare elite soldiers for the most challenging assignments. Preparation requires not only individual excellence, but the ability to function as a coordinated team." He paused. Over the past several weeks, concerns have been raised about unit cohesion and collaborative spirit. These concerns have been brought to my attention through proper channels and require immediate address. Victoria's pen moved across her journal, documenting Foster's words and the reactions they provoked. She noted soldiers shifting uncomfortably, others nodding approvingly, and Kane's group exchanging satisfied glances. Her focus extended to Foster himself. The slight tension in his shoulders, eyes avoiding certain sections of the room, and precise word choices revealed that he was following a script rather than speaking from personal conviction. This wasn't a commander addressing general concerns, it was an officer maneuvered to act in someone else's agenda. "Military service," Foster continued, voice gaining strength, "is about sacrifice. Not only risking your life, but daily sacrifices of individual preference for the greater good of the unit. Soldiers who cannot or will not make that sacrifice threaten mission success and the safety of their fellow service members." The room remained silent, but Victoria sensed the shifting energy. Soldiers understood someone was being targeted, and most had a good idea who it was. Conversations over the past week had focused on Victoria's isolation, mysterious background, and apparent indifference. Foster's eyes swept the room, making deliberate contact throughout the assembled soldiers. Victoria's pen moved methodically across the page, capturing every detail of the unfolding discussion. She noted Philip's aggressive insistence on brute force, Kim's anxious eagerness to follow, and Martinez's precise objections rooted in real-world considerations. Every body language cue, every tone fluctuation, every micro-expression was catalogued with the same analytical precision she had applied to threats on past missions. She remained silent, her eyes scanning the tactical diagrams while mentally running countless simulations. She could see immediately why Philip's plan would fail. The frontal assault ignored choke points, collateral risk, and hostage safety. Kim's support of the oversimplified plan compounded the risk. Martinez, while correct in her observations, lacked a full operational perspective that considered resource limitations and dynamic enemy behavior. Victoria weighed her options carefully. Intervening too soon would reveal knowledge that far exceeded her assigned rank and experience, potentially triggering questions she wasn't ready to answer. But remaining silent risked the failure of the exercise, giving her detractors ammunition to further question her attitude and willingness to collaborate. Finally, she looked up, her expression calm, controlled, and commanding in a way that immediately drew attention. "If we consider entry points from the east and west simultaneously," she said, voice quiet but precise, "we can divide the hostiles, create controlled evacuation paths for civilians, and maintain overwatch coverage without exposing team members to unnecessary risk. Assignments should match each member's strengths. Phillips, your experience with direct engagement is valuable. Overwatch support rather than entry team. Kim, coordinate comms and secure secondary access routes. Martinez, lead the intelligence and hostage movement strategy. I will manage the entry and threat neutralization coordination, ensuring timing synchronizes across teams." The table went silent. Philip's jaw tightened, his ego bristling at the subtle redirection of his authority. Kim froze mid-step, astonished that Victoria had not only understood the problem but immediately structured a superior plan. Martinez's skepticism faded into cautious respect, eyes narrowing as she considered the tactical logic. Victoria's words were concise, leaving no room for argument yet carefully framing each assignment to maintain team cohesion. She hadn't overridden anyone. She had integrated their strengths into a plan that exposed weaknesses in their initial approaches while ensuring success. Her mastery of the scenario was evident, but her tone and deliberate patience made it seem like a learning opportunity for the team rather than a display of superiority. As she spoke, her pen continued to move in her notebook, capturing reactions, noting hesitation, confusion, pride, and subtle acceptance. She wasn't just guiding the exercise, she was documenting how individuals responded to pressure, criticism, and collaborative decision-making. Phillips finally spoke, voice tight but controlled. "All right. I see your point. East and West entry, controlled approach, division of responsibilities. That could work. Proceed." Kim exhaled audibly, a mixture of relief and admiration. Martinez gave a single nod, finally acknowledging that the plan accounted for the complexities she had been concerned about. Victoria's calm competence had transformed tension into structured action without overt confrontation. She hadn't had to assert dominance. Her skill, clarity, and quiet authority did it for her. Every soldier at the table now understood that they were working with someone exceptional, someone who had already survived situations far beyond what they could imagine. As the team began implementing the plan in the simulation software, Victoria leaned back slightly, observing with detached focus. She was still in control of the narrative, still safeguarding her anonymity while proving competence. Yet she knew that this exercise had changed everything. Foster's evaluation, Kane's campaign, and the whispered judgments of her peers had all converged to create the perfect crucible. In just a few minutes, every soldier would see the depth of her tactical mastery, but only Victoria understood how carefully she had controlled the revelation. The careful balance of exposure and concealment she had maintained for 5 weeks had been tested, and she had passed with precision. The simulation began, and the room's energy shifted. Soldiers leaned in, executing tasks under Victoria's structured guidance. Decisions were made faster, communication flowed more effectively, and errors were minimized. What had begun as a potential confrontation transformed into a demonstration of collaboration at a level few had expected. Victoria's journal remained open, documenting every move, every reaction, every decision, not just to record performance, but to understand the underlying human dynamics. This was more than an exercise. It was an observation of how trained individuals adapted to leadership, strategy, and unforeseen challenges under the influence of someone whose skills transcended conventional assessment. By the end of the 30-minute session, the results would speak for themselves. But Victoria Thompson's presence had already shifted the perception of every soldier in the room. Silent competence had once again proven more powerful than confrontation, and the carefully concealed expertise that defined her existence remained intact, just barely. Falcon operatives alive in real combat situations. Her mind tracked Philip's exposure, Kim's blocked route, and Martinez's overtaxed coordination simultaneously, while mentally cataloguing alternative maneuvers that could have prevented the escalating complications. She remained silent, observing, because any direct intervention would immediately expose the depth of her experience. Yet every second, her analytical mind ran contingency scenarios, noting precisely where the team would falter and where small, timely adjustments could mitigate losses. Phillips tried to push forward, ignoring the defensive positions and structural threats Victoria had mentally marked. Kim, flustered by blocked pathways, began improvising with risky decisions. Martinez's voice over the radio grew tense, issuing instructions that couldn't fully compensate for the plan's inherent flaws. The simulation's automated systems added further pressure. Simulated hostages moved unpredictably, alarms sounded in unplanned areas, and additional hostiles appeared, forcing the assault teams to react dynamically. Victoria recognized that within 3 minutes, the compromised strategy would create a cascade of failures, highlighting the dangerous simplicity of Phillips' command and the limits of their collaborative planning. From her overwatch position, Victoria documented each team error, each delay, and each miscommunication. She logged the precise causes, structural oversights, poor timing, and the lack of unified contingency planning. Her pen moved as fast as her mind, every note reinforcing the contrast between practiced competence and amateur improvisation. And yet, even as she watched the tactical disaster unfold, her expression remained composed, unreadable. To the onlookers, she was simply observing. To herself, she was assessing, calculating, and preparing for the moment when intervention would be unavoidable. She understood that the evaluation panel, Foster, and every soldier observing would soon recognize not only the team's weaknesses but the exceptional capability quietly held by Victoria Thompson. The final outcome of the exercise wasn't merely about the hostage scenario, it was about perception, authority, and the unspoken hierarchy of true competence within the unit. By the time the simulation reached its midpoint, casualties, simulated, but dramatically impactful, highlighted the flaws of the team's hybrid strategy. Phillips' leadership, Kim's inexperience, and the structural oversight became painfully clear to every observer. Victoria, still maintaining her strategic distance, silently prepared for the precise moment to act, intervening in a way that would ensure mission success without fully revealing the extraordinary skills she had spent years perfecting. Victoria's training with Midnight Falcon had kept operatives alive during actual combat operations. She could see precisely what needed to happen. Phillips needed to withdraw from his exposed position and approach from a different vector. Kim needed to bypass the blocked route using alternative access points that had not been identified during planning. Martinez needed to redirect their coordination based on real-time tactical intelligence rather than predetermined assumptions. But providing that guidance would require revealing knowledge far beyond what any soldier at her apparent level should possess. Through her radio headset, Victoria could hear the growing frustration in her teammates' voices as they struggled to adapt their compromised strategy to the overwhelming tactical realities. Phillips requested backup that didn't exist. Kim asked for routing guidance Martinez couldn't provide. Martinez tried to coordinate responses to situations exceeding her training and tactical command. The timer showed 8 minutes remaining, but Victoria could see their current approach would result in mission failure within 2 minutes unless someone provided tactical guidance to salvage their deteriorating position. She keyed her radio with the calm professionalism that had characterized her communication style since arriving at Fort Meridian. Overwatch to assault teams. Recommend immediate tactical adjustment based on current hostile positions. Phillips' response crackled through her headset with barely controlled anger. Negative. Overwatch. Maintain position and provide covering fire as assigned. We've got this handled. But they didn't have it handled, and Victoria could see their tactical situation deteriorating with each passing second. In 90 seconds, the automated systems would introduce additional complications that would turn their difficulties into complete mission failure. Simulated hostages would be declared dead, assault team members marked as casualties, and their performance evaluation would reflect tactical incompetence that could affect their military careers. Victoria faced the choice she had avoided for 5 weeks: watch her teammates fail due to tactical decisions she knew were wrong, or reveal enough expertise to guide them towards success while risking exposure of capabilities that would raise uncomfortable questions about her background. Through the scope of her rifle, she tracked movement within the mock building as Phillips attempted to advance through a corridor Victoria knew was a tactical trap. In 30 seconds, he would enter a position where defensive fire would simulate fatal wounds unless someone warned him about the threat he couldn't see. Victoria's finger hovered over her radio transmission key. She realized 5 weeks of careful anonymity were about to end with a single decision that would change everything the people around her thought they understood about military competence and the true nature of the soldier hiding among them. The next 30 seconds unfolded with the clarity Victoria had experienced during actual combat operations, where time seemed to slow and every detail became hyper-focused while her mind processed tactical information at speeds exceeding conscious thought. Through her rifle scope, she watched Phillips advance into the corridor trap with the confident stride of someone believing his military training had prepared him for any situation. But Victoria could see what he couldn't. Motion sensors detected movement in adjacent rooms where hostile forces were positioning for a coordinated ambush. In 15 seconds, Phillips would reach the intersection where multiple firing angles would converge on his position. The automated training system would register simulated wounds that would remove him from the exercise while marking his approach as fatally flawed. Martinez's voice crackled through the radio with growing urgency as she monitored the building sensor systems. "Phillips, I'm reading multiple contacts in your vicinity. Recommend you hold position while we assess the tactical situation." Phillips' response carried the aggressive certainty of someone committed to a course of action who refused to acknowledge complications requiring adaptation. "Negative. We're moving forward according to plan. Kim, maintain your advance through the secondary corridor and prepare to converge on the target area." Victoria's training with Midnight Falcon had included extensive practice making split-second decisions under pressure when team members' lives depended on immediate action. She had learned to calculate risk factors, tactical alternatives, and probable outcomes in the compressed time frames that characterized combat operations where hesitation meant death. The current situation wasn't life or death, but the principles remained the same. Someone with superior tactical knowledge faced the choice of watching preventable failure occur or intervening with expertise that would raise uncomfortable questions. She keyed her radio transmission with the calm authority that had once coordinated operations across multiple continents under conditions where mission success determined national security outcomes. "All units halt advance immediately. Phillips, you have hostile forces at bearing 270 and 315 degrees from your current position. Kim, your route is compromised. Adjust to alternative access point Charlie 3. The certainty in Victoria's voice carried weight beyond normal military communication protocols. This wasn't a suggestion or recommendation. It was tactical intelligence delivered with the precision of someone who could see patterns others missed and calculate solutions others couldn't imagine. Phillips stopped his advance, confusion evident in the sudden silence following Victoria's transmission. Through her scope, she saw him checking his position against the building schematic while trying to understand how an overwatch position could provide detailed intelligence about interior tactical developments. "Thompson, how do you have visibility on interior hostile positions from your current location?" Martinez asked, her professional curiosity overriding protocol as she tried to understand tactical information exceeding standard overwatch capabilities. Victoria realized any detailed explanation would reveal reconnaissance techniques far beyond conventional military training. But Phillips was still in the kill zone, and Kim was approaching a corridor exposing him to concentrated defensive fire within the next minute. "Structural analysis combined with sensor pattern recognition," Victoria replied, hoping the technical explanation would satisfy immediate questions while providing the tactical guidance they needed. Phillips moved to a cover position at the northeast stairwell and approached the target area from above. Kim bypassed the blocked corridor, using the maintenance access on the building's west side. Victoria's instructions were delivered with military precision, revealing knowledge of the building's internal layout beyond what anyone should have possessed based on the limited schematics provided. Victoria drew on experience with similar structures during actual operations, unconsciously applying tactical knowledge gained through missions that officially didn't exist. Phillips began moving toward the position Victoria identified, his confusion overridden by recognition that her tactical assessment was accurate. The hostile forces preparing to ambush his original route were positioned exactly where she had indicated, and the alternative approach she suggested avoided their prepared defensive positions. Kim adjusted his route per Victoria's guidance, discovering the maintenance access she identified provided the concealed approach their compromised strategy had failed to include. His movement through the alternative route was swift and efficient, demonstrating the kind of tactical adaptation separating competent soldiers from exceptional ones. From her command position, Martinez monitored their progress with professional appreciation for tactical coordination exceeding anything she had witnessed during previous training exercises. Thompson, your intelligence is proving incredibly accurate. How are you generating such detailed tactical assessment from an overwatch position? The question hung in the desert air like a challenge Victoria couldn't deflect without revealing capabilities that would expose her true background. She was providing tactical guidance with a sophistication suggesting experience with actual combat operations, advanced reconnaissance techniques, and urban warfare scenarios far beyond standard military training. Through her rifle scope, Victoria watched Phillips successfully reach the elevated position she recommended. His tactical situation now vastly improved compared to the trap he had been approaching. Kim's flanking movement through the maintenance access proceeded undetected, positioning him for a coordinated assault that might actually succeed in completing the hostage rescue objective. The evaluation panel took notes with renewed intensity, focusing on the dramatic improvement in tactical effectiveness resulting from Victoria's intervention. Captain Foster stood at his observation platform, witnessing something that didn't fit his understanding of the soldiers under his command. Victoria's radio crackled with Martinez's voice, now carrying professional respect absent during the planning session. All units, we have successful tactical repositioning based on Overwatch intelligence. Phillips and Kim are in position for coordinated final assault on the target area. The timer showed 4 minutes remaining, and their tactical situation had transformed from impending failure into probable success through Victoria's guidance. But the cost was the exposure of expertise that raised fundamental questions about her background, training, and the true nature of her assignment to Fort Meridian. Foster's voice echoed across the training field through the speaker system, suggesting he was prepared to address a situation developing beyond his original evaluation parameters. Team 4, Halt exercise. All personnel report to the evaluation platform immediately for tactical debrief. Victoria understood that the careful anonymity she had maintained for 5 weeks was about to face scrutiny that could either expose her true identity or force explanations impossible to reconcile with her official background. The mask she had worn since arriving at Fort Meridian was beginning to slip, and she wasn't certain she could prevent it from falling away completely. As she secured her equipment and prepared to descend from her overwatch position, Victoria realized the storm she had anticipated was finally breaking over Fort Meridian with a force that would change everything. The quiet soldier dismissed as antisocial and unqualified was about to face questions determining whether she could continue operating under protective anonymity, or whether the truth about Operation Midnight Falcon would finally emerge from the shadows where it had been hidden for 3 years. The evaluation platform at Fort Meridian commanded a view of the entire training complex. Its elevated position allowed instructors to observe multiple exercises simultaneously while maintaining communication with field commanders across the base. Captain Bradley Foster stood at the center of the platform, rigid, encountering a situation challenging his understanding of military protocol, his clipboard forgotten as he focused entirely on the 4 soldiers approaching from the exercise area. Behind Foster, the panel of senior instructors exhibited professional curiosity that emerged when routine evaluations produced unexpected results. Sergeant Major Patricia Wells, a 30-year veteran with deployments to every major conflict zone of the past 3 decades, studied Victoria with assessment skills honed from evaluating thousands of soldiers under stress. Lieutenant Colonel Marcus Webb, the base's tactical training coordinator, reviewed digital recordings of the exercise with focused attention, trying to understand how a failed mission transformed into textbook execution through the intervention of a soldier whose capabilities exceeded all reasonable expectations. Victoria approached the platform with her usual measured stride, internally calculating responses to questions that would probe beyond the surface explanations she had prepared. Her teammates flanked her with expressions ranging from confusion to professional respect. Their previous hostility replaced by uncertainty about what they had witnessed during the tactical exercise. Phillips looked like someone forced to confront the limitations of his own expertise while recognizing superior knowledge in someone he had dismissed as incompetent. His confidence had been shaken by the realization that Victoria's tactical guidance had prevented what would have been a comprehensive mission failure. His usual aggressive demeanor had been replaced by cautious respect. The soldiers' reactions revealed how they responded when encountering capabilities they didn't understand. Kim's nervous energy had evolved into something approaching awe as he processed the tactical sophistication Victoria demonstrated during their coordination. The precision of her intelligence, the accuracy of her route recommendations, and the strategic thinking that salvaged their compromised mission suggested military experience far beyond what he had imagined possible for someone at her apparent rank. Martinez carried herself with the professional assessment skills of someone trained to analyze communication patterns and information flow under stress. Her expertise in tactical coordination allowed her to recognize that Victoria's guidance exhibited qualities characteristic of Special Operations Command rather than standard military training. Her expression suggested she was drawing conclusions that raised uncomfortable questions about Victoria's true background. Foster initiated the debrief with the authoritative tone he used when addressing situations requiring immediate clarification. Team 4, your exercise demonstrated remarkable tactical adaptation that resulted in mission success despite initial strategic difficulties. However, the source of that adaptation requires explanation. He paused, focusing specifically on Victoria with the intensity of someone suspecting circumstances exceeded his normal administrative authority. Soldier Thompson, your tactical guidance during the exercise exhibited knowledge inconsistent with your background and training records. Please explain how you were able to provide detailed intelligence about interior hostile positions from an exterior overwatch location. Victoria had anticipated this question since deciding to intervene in the exercise and had prepared responses that might satisfy immediate curiosity without revealing information compromising operational security. But the directness of Foster's inquiry made it clear that simple explanations would not suffice. Sir, I utilize structural analysis combined with pattern recognition based on sensor feedback and tactical probability assessment, Victoria replied, her voice maintaining the neutral professionalism that had frustrated interrogators during previous debriefs. The building's design created predictable defensive positions that could be identified through systematic observation. Sergeant Major Wells stepped forward with movement suggesting she was prepared to probe beyond surface explanations. Her experience with special operations personnel taught her to recognize the linguistic patterns characterizing soldiers trained to deflect questions about classified activities. Soldier Thompson, Wells said, her voice carrying authority from 3 decades of evaluating military personnel under conditions revealing their true capabilities, your tactical guidance exhibited familiarity with advanced reconnaissance techniques and urban warfare strategies that exceed standard training protocols. Where did you acquire that expertise? The question was more sophisticated than Foster's initial inquiry, demonstrating an understanding that Victoria's performance couldn't be explained through conventional military education. Wells probed for information about specialized training accounting for capabilities suggesting experience with classified operations. Victoria recognized continued deflection would intensify scrutiny while failing to satisfy legitimate command concerns about her background. But revealing information about Midnight Falcon would violate security protocols designed to protect operational methods and the families of personnel whose service records remained classified for national security reasons. My previous assignments included training scenarios that emphasized tactical problem solving under stress, Victoria replied, hoping vague references to unspecified training would satisfy immediate questions without compromising security protocols. Lieutenant Colonel Webb approached the questioning from a different angle, his tactical training expertise allowing him to recognize specific techniques Victoria had employed during the exercise. Thompson, your route recommendations demonstrated knowledge of building layouts exceeding schematic information provided during planning. That suggests either prior familiarity with this facility or training in rapid structural assessment beyond standard military instruction. The observation was accurate and dangerous because it indicated Webb possessed enough tactical knowledge to recognize the sophistication of Victoria's performance. His question was not based on suspicion or curiosity, it was professional assessment identifying capabilities requiring explanation. Victoria's teammates listened to the interrogation with growing awareness that they had been working alongside someone whose military background was far more complex than they had imagined. Phillips showed particular interest, recognizing Victoria's tactical expertise had exceeded his own despite years of conventional military training he had considered comprehensive. Foster regained control of the questioning with the assertiveness of someone feeling his authority challenged by circumstances he didn't understand. Thompson, I'm ordering you to provide a detailed explanation of your tactical training background. Your performance during this exercise suggests capabilities inconsistent with your personnel records, and that inconsistency requires immediate resolution. The direct order created a situation Victoria had hoped to avoid, a formal military command requiring response while potentially compromising security protocols protecting classified operations. She could refuse to answer and face disciplinary action, or provide explanations that might expose information about missions officially non-existent. Victoria stood at attention with perfect military bearing drilled into her during training beyond anything the questioners had experienced. Her eyes focused on a point beyond Foster's shoulder while she calculated responses satisfying immediate command concerns without violating security protocols that had kept Midnight Falcon operatives alive when exposure meant death. "Sir," Victoria said finally, her voice carrying a quality suggesting she was prepared to provide information that would change the conversation entirely, "my tactical background includes training that requires security clearance verification before details can be discussed in this setting." The response was both acknowledgement and warning. Confirmation Victoria possessed classified military experience while indicating further inquiry would need protocols for handling sensitive information. Foster faced a situation exceeding his administrative authority and potentially involving security classifications beyond his clearance. Continued questioning would either expose classified information or force Victoria to refuse direct orders. The storm building since her arrival at Fort Meridian was about to break with consequences extending far beyond the routine evaluation Foster had planned. His authority over a soldier whose presence made him uncomfortable was challenged. What happened next would determine whether Victoria could maintain protective anonymity or whether the truth about Operation Midnight Falcon would finally emerge from the shadows where it had been hidden for 3 years. Captain Foster's face flushed with anger that emerged when junior personnel invoked security protocols challenging his authority. His military career had been built on maintaining control through aggressive assertion of rank and regulation, and Victoria's reference to classified training represented exactly the bureaucratic obstruction he had learned to overcome through determined pressure. "Soldier Thompson," Foster said, his voice carrying the dangerous edge preceding disciplinary action, "I am your commanding officer at this facility, and I am ordering you to explain your tactical background immediately. Security classifications do not exempt you from answering direct questions about your qualifications for this training program." Victoria remained at attention, expression neutral despite recognizing Foster escalated the confrontation beyond professional inquiry into personal conflict. His understanding of security protocols was limited to standard military classifications, and he clearly didn't recognize the implications of her reference to training requiring special clearance verification. Sergeant Major Wells stepped forward with calm authority, having encountered classified operations throughout her 30-year career. Her experience with special operations personnel taught her to recognize linguistic patterns and behavioral indicators characterizing soldiers whose service records contained information not discussable in standard military settings. "Captain Foster," Wells said carefully, her voice carrying respectful disagreement with a superior officer potentially compromising security protocols, "if Thompson is referencing classified training that requires clearance verification, we may need to follow appropriate channels rather than pursuing immediate disclosure." In this setting, Foster turned toward Wells with the frustrated expression of someone whose authority was questioned by subordinates more concerned with bureaucratic procedures than immediate command decisions. "Sergeant Major, this soldier has been operating under false pretenses for 5 weeks, demonstrating capabilities exceeding her documented background while refusing participation in unit cohesion activities. That behavior suggests either deception or insubordination, both requiring immediate address." Lieutenant Colonel Webb studied digital recordings of the tactical exercise on his tablet, focusing on moments where Victoria's guidance demonstrated knowledge beyond conventional military training. His expertise in tactical instruction allowed him to recognize techniques characteristic of special operations rather than standard infantry procedures. "Thompson," Webb said, approaching the questioning from a different angle. "Your tactical recommendations during the exercise exhibited familiarity with advanced urban warfare protocols typically reserved for specialized units. Can you identify where you received training in those specific techniques?" The question was more sophisticated than Foster's aggressive demands, demonstrating professional recognition that Victoria's performance required explanation beyond simple deflection. Webb was probing for information about specialized military instruction that would account for capabilities he could identify but not fully understand. Victoria calculated her response carefully, recognizing that continued evasion would intensify scrutiny while potentially compromising security protocols that protected not just her own identity but operational methods keeping other classified personnel safe. Revealing details about Midnight Falcon would violate clearance requirements established for legitimate national security reasons. "Sir," Victoria replied, her voice maintaining the measured professionalism that had characterized all her responses. "My previous training included specialized urban warfare instruction that emphasized tactical problem solving under stress. The specific methodologies require security verification before details can be discussed with personnel who haven't been cleared for that information." Foster's patience finally reached its breaking point. The careful deflection and bureaucratic references had transformed what he intended as a straightforward disciplinary action into a complex situation that challenged his authority while suggesting Victoria possess connections or clearances exceeding his own administrative reach. "That's enough," Foster declared, his voice carrying across the training field with volume, drawing attention from soldiers observing the debrief from a distance. "Thompson, I am ordering you to remove your uniform top immediately. If you have specialized training tattoos or identification marks explaining your background, we're going to examine them right now." The orders struck the evaluation platform like a physical blow, creating shocked silence among instructors who recognized Foster had crossed boundaries separating legitimate military discipline from inappropriate personal humiliation. Ordering a soldier to remove uniform components in front of assembled personnel violated multiple regulations while potentially exposing the very classified information security protocols were designed to protect. Victoria's teammates looked at each other with expressions ranging from confusion to outright discomfort as they realized they were witnessing something exceeding normal military procedure. Phillips, who had advocated for aggressive action against Victoria throughout their time at Fort Meridian, appeared uncertain about Foster's approach to resolving questions about her background. Wells stepped forward with the authoritative presence of someone whose rank and experience provided both the obligation and authority to intervene in situations violating military protocol. "Captain Foster, that order is inappropriate and potentially compromising to security classifications that may be involved in this situation." But Foster had committed to a course of action he viewed as necessary to resolve questions undermining his authority since Victoria's arrival at the facility. "Sergeant Major, this soldier has been operating under suspicious circumstances for 5 weeks while demonstrating capabilities suggesting either classified background or deliberate deception. Either way, we need immediate clarification." Victoria understood the confrontation had reached a point where Foster's personal agenda had overcome professional judgment, creating a situation that would either expose classified information or force her to refuse direct orders in front of hundreds of witnesses. The careful balance she had maintained for 5 weeks was collapsing under pressure, exceeding her ability to deflect through passive resistance. She could comply with Foster's order and risk exposing the tattoo that would immediately identify her connection to Operation Midnight Falcon, potentially compromising security protocols protecting ongoing classified operations. Or she could refuse and face court-martial proceedings that would inevitably investigate her background through official channels, ultimately revealing the same information. Victoria reached for the zipper of her uniform top with movements appearing calm and professional despite recognizing that her decision would change everything. The metal teeth separated with a soft sound seeming impossibly loud in the desert silence. While hundreds of soldiers watched a confrontation none fully understood but all recognized as significant, the fabric fell away to reveal the plain olive tank top underneath. Victoria sensed the shift in energy across the training field. Foster leaned forward with the satisfaction of someone whose aggressive approach was finally producing results. Instructors watched with professional concern as Victoria turned slightly to adjust her position in the desert heat, revealing what had been hidden beneath her uniform for 5 weeks. A tattoo between her shoulder blades. Sergeant Major Wells took a sharp breath, and Lieutenant Colonel Webb stepped forward with sudden recognition. The Iron Wolf insignia emerged into view like a ghost materializing from shadow, a snarling wolf's head surrounded by crossed lightning bolts and 7 stars arranged in a pattern appearing random to most observers but carrying specific meaning for anyone familiar with classified special operations. The artwork was intricate and professional, but more importantly, it identified membership in units that officially didn't exist. Foster's satisfaction vanished as he recognized that his aggressive approach to resolving Victoria's mysterious background had uncovered information exceeding his clearance level and potentially his authority to handle. The Iron Wolf wasn't just a military tattoo, it signified participation in operations classified beyond normal military security protocols. The storm building since Victoria's arrival at Fort Meridian finally broke over the training field, reshaping everything the witnesses thought they understood about military capability and the true nature of national defense operations hidden from public knowledge. The silence following the revelation was absolute, the kind of profound quiet occurring when reality shifts dramatically, requiring everyone present time to process what they were witnessing. Lieutenant Colonel Webb stood frozen at the edge of the evaluation platform, his tablet forgotten, hands slack with recognition. The Iron Wolf insignia wasn't just familiar. It was a symbol he had encountered in classified briefings carrying security restrictions he had never expected to see on a soldier standing in front of him. Sergeant Major Wells moved with careful precision, approaching something dangerous and unpredictable. Her 30 years of military experience included exposure to special operations existing in the shadows of conventional military structure, and the Iron Wolf tattoo represented participation in missions compartmentalized beyond normal security classifications. Her eyes tracked from the tattoo to Victoria's face with professional assessment, recognizing capability she had heard described but never witnessed directly. Captain Foster's expression cycled through confusion, recognition, and dawning horror as he began to understand the implications of what his aggressive confrontation had uncovered. The Iron Wolf wasn't a standard military insignia explainable through conventional service records. It identified participation in operations so classified their existence was barely acknowledged by Pentagon officials with clearance levels exceeding his own administrative authority. Victoria remained motionless at the center of the platform, her tank top clinging to her skin in the desert heat, while hundreds of soldiers stared at artwork most didn't recognize but all understood were significant. The tattoo was beautiful and intricate, but its meaning went far beyond aesthetic appreciation. It identified membership in units operating beyond conventional military structure, conducting missions essential to national security yet invisible to public knowledge. The first person to break the silence was Webb, his voice carrying careful respect reserved for situations involving classified information exceeding one's clearance. "Thompson, that insignia represents Operation Midnight Falcon, doesn't it?" Victoria's eyes tracked Webb with careful assessment, evaluating how much he knew about operations officially non-existent. Her response needed to balance acknowledgement of his recognition while protecting information remaining classified despite exposure of her tattoo. "Sir," Victoria replied, her voice maintaining the measured professionalism characterizing all her responses throughout the confrontation, "that information requires security verification before it can be discussed in this setting." Webb's recognition triggered understanding among other instructors whose experience included briefings about special operations referenced but never detailed in conventional military planning sessions. The Iron Wolf represented participation in missions legendary within classified military circles, operations whispered about in secure briefing rooms but never discussed in official documentation. Wells stepped forward with authority from senior rank and extensive experience with classified operations most military personnel would never encounter. "Captain Foster," she said, her voice carrying respectful but firm disagreement with his handling of the situation, "this soldier's background involves security classifications exceeding the scope of routine personnel evaluation." Foster found himself facing circumstances challenging every assumption he had made about his authority over the soldiers in his training program. Victoria wasn't just a mysterious recruit whose background required clarification. She was an operative whose service record involved missions classified beyond his clearance level to access or evaluate. The implications were staggering. For 5 weeks, he had attempted to assert disciplinary authority over someone whose military experience included operations essential to national security but invisible to conventional military structure. His aggressive approach to resolving questions about her background had forced exposure of classified information designed to remain hidden for legitimate security reasons. Phillips, Kim, and Martinez stood at the edge of the platform, expressions reflecting their growing understanding that they had been working alongside someone whose capabilities exceeded anything they had imagined possible. The tactical expertise Victoria had demonstrated during the exercise wasn't the result of exceptional conventional training. It was the product of participation in real-world operations that tested her abilities under conditions where failure meant death. Victoria sensed the shift in energy across the training field as word spread among assembled soldiers that something extraordinary was happening on the evaluation platform. Conversations died as more personnel turned their attention toward the confrontation, evolving from routine discipline into recognition of classified military capability. Her teammates looked at her with new understanding, transforming previous hostility into something approaching awe. Phillips, who had challenged her tactical knowledge during planning sessions, now recognized that his criticism had been directed towards someone whose expertise exceeded his own by margins. He couldn't begin to. Kim's nervous energy had evolved into respectful curiosity about the true nature of Victoria's military background, while Martinez studied her with professional assessment skills derived from recognizing communication patterns characteristic of special operations rather than conventional military service. Foster realized that his confrontation with Victoria had escalated beyond his authority to manage effectively. The revelation of her classified background created responsibilities exceeding his administrative role while potentially exposing information requiring security protocols he wasn't qualified to implement. Victoria stood at the center of the platform with the calm bearing that had characterized her presence since arriving at Fort Meridian. Internally, she was calculating the consequences of exposure that would inevitably lead to questions about Operation Midnight Falcon and the 11 operatives who hadn't returned from missions that officially never occurred. Her careful anonymity had been shattered by Foster's aggressive approach to demonstrating authority, and the protective silence she had maintained for 3 years was about to be replaced by scrutiny reaching the highest levels of military command. The approaching sound of vehicles drew everyone's attention toward the base's administrative complex, where official cars moved with purposeful speed, signaling emergency response to developing situations. Radio communications crackled across multiple frequencies as word of the situation reached command levels with authority to address circumstances involving classified operations and personnel requiring special handling procedures. Victoria recognized the signs of official intervention that would either provide protection for classified information or expose details about missions designed to remain hidden from public knowledge. The storm building since her arrival at Fort Meridian was about to be met by forces operating at levels of authority beyond anything the witnesses could imagine. What happened next would determine whether the truth about Operation Midnight Falcon remained contained within security protocols designed to protect national interests or whether the most classified military operation in recent history would be exposed to scrutiny capable of compromising ongoing missions and endangering personnel whose survival depended on operational secrecy. The quiet soldier dismissed as weak and antisocial was about to become the center of attention for military commanders whose decisions shaped national security policy. The consequences would extend far beyond the routine training evaluation. Foster had planned to demonstrate his authority over a recruit whose presence had made him uncomfortable. The black SUVs approaching Fort Meridian's training complex moved with coordinated precision characteristic of official responses to situations involving classified military operations. Their arrival created ripples of attention throughout the base as personnel recognized distinctive vehicles and communication equipment signaling high-level command intervention in circumstances exceeding normal administrative procedures. General Benjamin Clark emerged from the lead vehicle with the measured authority of someone whose career had been built on managing crises at the intersection of national security and operational secrecy. At 58, he carried himself with confident bearing forged from 35 years of making decisions that shaped military policy while maintaining public ignorance of operations essential to national defense yet invisible to civilian oversight. Clark's presence at Fort Meridian represented intervention from command levels most base personnel would never encounter. His authority extended beyond conventional hierarchy into the shadowy realm of special operations compartmentalized beyond normal security classifications. Behind Clark, Colonel Amanda Sterling carried briefcases containing documentation requiring security clearances exceeding anything available to personnel at Fort Meridian. As liaison between Special Operations Command and conventional military administration, she was uniquely qualified to manage situations where classified personnel were inadvertently exposed to scrutiny compromising operational security. The assembled soldiers immediately recognized they were witnessing something far beyond routine military procedure. General Clark's arrival transformed what began as disciplinary action against a problematic recruit into official intervention suggesting national security implications none had anticipated during tactical evaluations. Victoria remained motionless at the center of the platform, her Iron Wolf tattoo visible to hundreds beginning to understand they had witnessed exposure of classified military capability rather than simple confrontation between recruit and commanding officer. Her expression maintained the neutral professionalism characterizing her behavior since arriving at Fort Meridian, but internally she calculated the consequences of official intervention that would inevitably lead to questions about Operation Midnight Falcon and the 11 operatives whose sacrifice remained classified. Captain Foster stood frozen at the edge of the platform, his face pale with recognition that his aggressive demonstration of authority had uncovered information exceeding his clearance. General Clark's arrival confirmed that his confrontation with Victoria had escalated beyond his administrative control into territory involving security classifications and command authority, rendering his actions subject to review by officers whose decisions could end his military career. Clark approached the evaluation platform with purposeful stride, drawing attention from every person within visual range. His uniform bore insignia and decorations indicating participation in operations spanning multiple decades and conflict zones, while his bearing projected absolute authority forged from making life-or-death decisions under conditions where hesitation meant failure. "Captain Foster," Clark said, his voice carrying across the training field with clarity reaching every soldier within hearing distance, "who authorized you to expose classified operational tattoos in a public setting?" The question struck Foster like a physical blow, confirming that his order for Victoria to remove her uniform top had violated security protocols protecting not just individual operatives but entire operational frameworks classified for national security reasons. His attempt to resolve questions about Victoria's background had inadvertently compromised information designed to remain hidden from personnel lacking appropriate clearance. Foster responded in stammered fragments, revealing growing understanding of his error. "Sir, I was attempting to clarify discrepancies in Soldier Thompson's background affecting unit cohesion and training effectiveness. Her tactical performance suggested capabilities exceeding her documented qualifications." Clark's expression indicated professional assessment of leadership failure extending beyond procedural error into security compromise that could affect ongoing operations and personnel safety. Operation Midnight Falcon personnel carry special classifications requiring Pentagon-level authorization before their backgrounds can be investigated or exposed. The mention of Operation Midnight Falcon by name created shocked silence among assembled instructors and soldiers, who recognized they were witnessing official acknowledgement of classified operations legendary within military circles but never discussed in conventional settings. Victoria's connection to Midnight Falcon explained not just her tactical expertise but her presence at Fort Meridian under circumstances generating questions throughout her 5-week assignment. Lieutenant Colonel Webb stepped forward with respectful attention senior officers showed when addressing general-level command in situations involving classified information. "Sir, we were unaware of Thompson's operational background. Her performance during tactical exercises exhibited capabilities suggesting specialized training, but we had no access to classification information explaining her expertise." Clark nodded with understanding derived from extensive experience managing situations where classified personnel operated undercover identities protecting both individual operatives and operational security. "Colonel Webb," Clark said, "Operation Midnight Falcon operatives are assigned to conventional facilities for observation and evaluation purposes that cannot be discussed without appropriate security clearance. Thompson's presence here serves objectives extending beyond normal training protocols." Victoria finally spoke, her voice carrying the measured professionalism characterizing all her communications, now directed toward command authority understanding the true nature of her background and assignment. "Sir, I apologize for the security exposure. The tactical situation required intervention revealing capabilities I was attempting to keep concealed." Clark focused on Victoria with professional assessment reserved for operatives whose service records included missions officially non-existent. "Thompson, your tactical intervention during the exercise was appropriate given the circumstances. However, exposure of your operational background creates complications requiring immediate address." Colonel Sterling approached the platform with documentation initiating the process of managing security exposure while protecting information remaining classified despite Victoria's inadvertent revelation. Her expertise in handling situations where classified operations intersected with conventional military structure made her essential for resolving circumstances potentially affecting ongoing national security operations. The assembled soldiers watched the exchange with growing awareness that they had witnessed something extraordinary. Exposure of a classified operative whose military background included participation in missions essential to national defense but invisible to public knowledge. Victoria's transformation from mysterious recruit to acknowledged special operations veteran revealed capabilities exceeding anything most would encounter during their military careers. Foster faced consequences extending far beyond disciplinary action into potential court-martial proceedings for compromising classified information through inappropriate command decisions. His attempt to assert authority over a problematic soldier had inadvertently exposed operational security protected by regulations he did not understand and clearance requirements exceeding his administrative authority. Clark's presence confirmed that Victoria's exposure had triggered intervention from command levels operating in the shadows of conventional military structure, conducting oversight of operations compartmentalized beyond normal security classifications. The storm building since her arrival at Fort Meridian had finally broken, with consequences extending throughout the military hierarchy while potentially affecting operations hidden from public scrutiny. What happened next would determine whether the truth about Operation Midnight Falcon could be contained within security protocols protecting national interests, or whether the most classified military operation in recent history would be exposed to investigation capable of compromising ongoing missions and endangering personnel whose survival depended on operational secrecy. Already partially shattered by Foster's aggressive pursuit of answers he should never have sought. The weeks following General Clark's intervention at Fort Meridian unfolded with the swift precision characterizing military justice when security protocols were compromised through leadership failure. Captain Bradley Foster faced a court-martial inquiry examining not just his inappropriate order to expose Victoria's tattoo, but his complete failure to recognize the authority and classification level of a Pentagon-level operative whose presence at the base served purposes exceeding his clearance. The inquiry board reviewing Foster's conduct included officers experienced with classified operations, capable of assessing the full scope of his security violations. Their conclusions were unambiguous. Foster's aggressive pursuit of disciplinary action against Victoria had compromised operational security through reckless disregard for protocols designed to protect individual operatives and ongoing mission effectiveness. His military career was effectively terminated within 72 hours of General Clark's arrival. Sergeant Melissa Kane discovered that her campaign to document Victoria's supposed problematic behavior had been captured in multiple formats, reaching her commanding officers with devastating clarity. Video evidence of Kane publicly mocking a classified operative whose service record included missions essential to national security created consequences far beyond simple disciplinary action, resulting in permanent reassignment to positions where her judgment posed minimal risk to military effectiveness. Corporal Nathan Phillips learned that his physical confrontation with Victoria during the tactical exercise had involved assaulting a Midnight Falcon operative whose authority superseded normal military hierarchy. The incident was documented as assault on superior personnel, carrying criminal charges that would follow him throughout civilian life while ending any possibility of military advancement or honorable discharge. Private Tyler Kim's aggressive questioning of Victoria's credentials was reviewed as harassment of classified personnel, resulting in immediate discharge from advanced training programs and reassignment to administrative positions that would never again provide access to operations involving national security considerations. His military career was reduced to routine duties, reflecting his inability to recognize competence concealed beneath unassuming appearances. But the most significant transformation occurred in Victoria herself. General Clark's intervention provided her with opportunities to channel her grief over Operation Midnight Falcon into constructive change capable of preventing similar losses in the future. The exposure of her background ended the protective anonymity she had maintained for 3 years, but it also opened pathways to apply her expertise in ways that could save lives while honoring the memory of the 11 operatives who had not returned from missions that officially never occurred. Within a month of the confrontation at Fort Meridian, Victoria was appointed Director of Advanced Tactical Training, a position created specifically to integrate lessons learned from classified operations into conventional military instruction. Her Pentagon office carried authority, enabling her to reshape training protocols across all branches, ensuring future operatives would benefit from tactical knowledge purchased through sacrifice and survival during missions where failure meant death. Victoria's first initiative involved a complete overhaul of urban warfare training scenarios, replacing theoretical exercises with realistic simulations derived from actual combat conditions encountered by special operations personnel during classified missions. Sanitized training programs were replaced with challenging scenarios testing decision-making under pressure, preparing soldiers for tactical complexities understood only through real-world experience. Her influence extended beyond tactics into cultural transformation, addressing the prejudices and assumptions that had characterized her treatment at Fort Meridian. Victoria implemented evaluation systems prioritizing practical competence over theoretical knowledge, establishing protocols recognizing capability regardless of how it was packaged or presented. The casual dismissal of quiet competence that had marked her early weeks at the base was replaced by institutional awareness that true strength often remained concealed until circumstances demanded its revelation. The Iron Wolf tattoo that had ended her anonymity became a symbol of hidden expertise throughout military culture, representing the principle that appearances could be fatally deceiving when assessing capability or threat levels. Training facilities across all branches adopted Victoria's core doctrine: never underestimate someone based on surface characteristics, because the most dangerous operatives were often those appearing least threatening until the moment they demonstrated true capabilities. 5 years after the confrontation at Fort Meridian, Victoria stood before a congressional committee presenting her annual report on military training effectiveness. The statistics were impressive. Casualty rates during special operations had decreased by 40%, mission success rates had improved by 50%, and a new generation of military leaders understood that competence came in forms not immediately recognizable. Beyond the numbers, cultural transformation extended throughout the military establishment. The institution that had once dismissed Victoria as weak had learned to recognize that quiet observers might possess the most valuable tactical knowledge, that mysterious backgrounds often concealed essential expertise, and that seemingly unimpressive soldiers could possess capabilities exceeding conventional understanding. Victoria's office overlooked the Pentagon courtyard, where thousands of military personnel moved through their daily routines, most unaware that their training protocols had been shaped by lessons learned during missions classified beyond their clearance. A framed photograph on her desk showed 12 operatives in combat gear. The night before Operation Midnight Falcon commenced, 11 faces that would never age beyond that moment. Victoria herself, the sole survivor, had transformed guilt into purpose, honoring their sacrifice while protecting others from similar losses. A knock on her door interrupted her thoughts that still returned to that desert night when everything changed. "Come in," she called, recognizing the weight of responsibility that came with each new assignment. A young colonel entered, carrying folders marked with the highest security classifications. "We've received a request from the Joint Chiefs. They need your assessment of training protocols for a new classified operation. Timeline, 48 hours. Victoria accepted the folders with calm professionalism, characteristic of her response to challenges since her anonymity was shattered at Fort Meridian. Each assignment carried the potential to prevent losses families would never have to endure and tactical knowledge that could mean the difference between mission success and catastrophic failure. As the colonel departed, Victoria opened the first folder and began reviewing mission parameters designed to test new operatives under conditions similar to those that had claimed 11 lives during Operation Midnight Falcon. But this time, the operatives would benefit from training protocols incorporating hard-earned lessons in tactical adaptation, strategic thinking, and innovative problem-solving, skills only someone who had survived when survival seemed impossible could teach. The quiet woman who had been publicly humiliated for not looking like a soldier had become the architect of military doctrine shaping how the world's most powerful armed forces identified, developed, and deployed specialized capability. Her transformation from dismissed recruit to Pentagon-level authority represented more than personal vindication. It embodied institutional evolution, recognizing strength in forms previously overlooked or undervalued. The tattoo on her back remained hidden beneath her uniform, but its meaning had spread throughout military culture as a reminder that true competence did not announce itself through aggressive display. It waited, observed, and demonstrated precision when circumstances required capabilities exceeding normal expectations. Victoria Thompson had learned that lesson in the harsh Arizona desert, where prejudice and assumption had been stripped away to reveal expertise that changed everything. The military had learned it too, becoming stronger and more effective through recognition that appearances could be fatally deceiving, and that the most valuable operatives were often those who earned the right to exceptional capability, whether anyone recognized them or not. That's all for today. If you like that, don't forget to subscribe and turn on the notification bell to never miss an upload.